Hi, just taking you through the hair consultation process. And just keep in mind that you will find your own way of saying things and explaining things to clients as you go along. This is just to really give you some tips. So, when a new client comes into the clinic, we get them to fill out some paperwork. Not all of the information on the initial 2 pages is relevant to hair removal, but just explain to our clients that lots of people come into the clinic initially just for hair removal and then find out about so many other treatments that we do and products that we have available. So if we can get them to fill out as much of this information sort of relevant to skin as well, that can be handy down the track, or can start a conversation with them. Get them to have a read before they come into the consult through the information sheet, and then get them to scan through the consent form, but we sign that together in the consultation. So once in the consultation room, just run through that paperwork with the client, check that there's no allergies or contradicting illnesses or medications. Once you've deemed that they're a suitable client for laser, you can proceed with the consultation. So what we need to explain is what we actually do to that hair. So we use a laser. The definition of laser light is that it just contains a single wavelength. In our laser, the GentleMax Pro, the wavelength we use for skin types 1 to a cautious 4 is 755 nanometres. The 1064 nanometre wavelength is also contained within the same machine that we can switch over to for use in darker skin types. So that the energy in that wavelength is really strongly attracted to and absorbed by melanin. That's why that wavelength has been selected for use in this laser. And that's why it's so suitable for hair removal. So the melanin in the hair, that's the pigment in the hair, absorbs that laser energy, instantly converts to heat, and effectively we really heat up that little hair inside its follicle. You also need to explain to our clients the growth and shed cycle of a hair. So your hair on our body, everywhere on our body is constantly growing and shedding. On our head, that process is 3 to 6 years. On our face, it's usually about 4 weeks or so with hormonal facial hair. On our bodies, it tends to be about 6 to 7 weeks. So the anagen phase of that growth cycle is when the hair is attached to its blood supply, and there's this big bulb at the base of the hair follicle, and the hair is actively growing at that point. The hair actively grows for a certain amount of time, then that bulb withers away and the hair removes itself from its little blood supply and just moves into the follicle and just sits there higher up in the follicle. And then it just, in the telogen phase, sort of the end stage of the growth cycle, it just rests inside the follicle for a certain amount of weeks and then just slowly works its way out and falls out when it's ready. Every time a client comes in for a treatment, they'll have all of the hairs in that treatment area zapped with the laser, treated with the laser. All of the hairs will respond at the time, and over the next couple of weeks will fall out, all of the hairs that were present when they came in for treatment. But the only the hairs in the anagen phase are really effectively treated with the laser, because when the hair's in the anagen phase, it means the laser energy is absorbed right down that hair shaft, deeply into the bed of the follicle, and the presence of that bulb means that there's plenty of melanin right down in the follicle bed. So much so that we can heat up and thermally damage, effectively cauterize that tiny little blood supply, and also damage the growth cells on the follicle wall. So that's how we damage that follicle enough to effectively permanently shut it down. And once a follicle doesn't have a viable blood supply anymore, your body will actually clear it away. It has no use for it anymore. But these other hairs, although they've fallen out after a laser treatment, a new little hair will still grow up behind them. So hence the client needs to commit to a series of laser treatments. The risks of laser are that alongside the energy in the laser beam getting absorbed by the melanin in the hair, it can also get absorbed in the surrounding skin and overheat the surrounding skin, or cause too much thermal accumulation in that skin and therefore cause a laser burn. That can be anything from a nasty sunburn to a crusting, a blister, or pigmentation changes where the laser can stimulate the melanin to go into overdrive in that area and leave a greater deposit of melanin in the area, so darker spot, or paler where the laser can actually sort of bleach the melanin out of that skin and cause hypopigmentation. In theory, laser burns should heal well because it's a very superficial burn, but the pigmentation changes are potentially permanent, and there is a risk of scarring if the client had reduced healing abilities or if the healing process was continually disrupted, for example, if a scab kept catching on clothing or something like that. So we tend to start on cautious settings and then build up as we've proven that client's skin can tolerate those settings we're using. Explain to the client that the biggest risk is sun exposure. So we really need to encourage that client and to emphasise to them that their sun protection is a responsibility that they really need to take on board for the entire duration of having laser treatments here with us. If we can trust that they've been sun protective, and we know they have been, we can continually select the optimal settings to get the best outcome for them. If we don't feel confident that they've been sun protective, we'll either not be able to treat. We could possibly treat on vastly reduced joules, so they won't get the optimal outcome. Or if we didn't know they'd been sun exposed, we could cause harm with the laser, and that's when the risk of a laser burn is really increased. So just stress to the client initially and at every appointment that sun protection is really, really important for them to get the best outcome and have the safest experience. We do shave the hair prior to treatment. If the client's been waxing, we need to wait a few weeks for that hair growth to all be present again. The reason we shave is for safety, because we don't want a long length of dark hair sitting on top of the skin surface and getting cooked along the skin. And for efficacy, because if we shave off that hair right at the skin surface, it means all of the energy from the laser is being absorbed straight down into the hair follicle, so they'll get better results and have a safer experience. And also stress to the client that we can't treat over fake tan, because that fake tan is depositing a pigment on the skin surface, and that obviously can absorb the laser energy and increase the risk of us burning the skin there too. If you've got through to this point of the consultation, ask the client if they've got any questions, provide reassurance if needed. And you can run through what it feels like. Some clients are quite apprehensive. So the way we describe it is just that it's like a flick with an elastic band. There's heat because of the heat from the energy being absorbed down into the hair follicles. That's the hot sensation. But there's also at the exact same moment a really cold sensation on the skin surface, where the dynamic cooling device in the laser sprays super cooled water onto the skin surface through the cryogen spray, and that keeps the skin nice and cool while we just heat up where we want to inside the hair. So it's a snappy, hot, cold sensation most people find quite tolerable. Just another quick note about hair removal. It's really important at the initial consultation stage to manage expectations really well with clients. Inform clients that they will need, on any given body area, they will need the 6 to 8 initial treatments, and then possibly ongoing maintenance after that, depending on their own level of active or dormant hair follicles. Explain the influence of hormones, that over any given episode in the years ahead, their hormones might stimulate some dormant hair follicles to be active, and that at that stage they will need some more laser. And particularly in hormonal facial hair clients, and we treat a lot of women with hormonal facial hair problems, really explain to them that although laser is the best option in terms of managing those hairs, minimising the impact that hair growth has on their life, the hairs will be fewer and finer and they'll grow slower, but it's not a quick fix. They most likely will need ongoing treatments because that hormonal presence stimulating that follicle activity is still there. So we're fighting a bit of an ongoing battle against it, really. Another note or two about hair removal. We can't treat hairs that are white or grey or just naturally very blonde, and that's just because the mechanism that we use to destroy the hair follicle is related to the melanin in the hair. So if the hair doesn't contain melanin, there's nothing there to absorb the laser energy, so it's ineffective. So if someone comes in and you feel like their hair really is bordering on too pale, it only needs to contain a small amount of melanin, so sometimes it's worth doing a test patch area. But if it's really pale hair, just inform them that they're not going to see a very good reduction. If you're treating a young client, be really, really clear in the early stages that they are going to need a lot of maintenance treatments over the years because their hormones will still be very active, their body's still developing. So laser's still the best method of hair management out there, but they will need ongoing maintenance over the years as compared to someone that we started treating when they were already maybe 35 or onwards. And if you're treating male clients, male chest hair, abdominal hair, back hair, stretch those appointments out a little bit longer, maybe 7 to 8 weeks for those appointments, and that hair is stubborn. They will need the full 6 to 8 sessions and then possibly maintenance sessions after that as their hormones and their genetics keep dictating some hair growth in those areas. And with the shaving of the hairs before they come in for a treatment, obviously, as I said, that's for efficacy and safety of the laser treatment. But the reason they can't wax or pluck is because that's actually removing the hair from the root, and we need that hair shaft within the follicle to be present because it's the shaft of the hair that contains the melanin. So again, the mechanics of the laser require that melanin to be in the follicle. So if they've plucked or waxed, they've removed that hair from the follicle and we won't get any absorption or any effect. And with aftercare from a hair removal treatment, we just apply a small amount of aloe vera gel here for comfort. If someone's feeling distressed with the heat, there's a little bit of a warmth sensation after the hair removal. If they're feeling a little bit distressed with the heat afterwards, we do always have a supply of cold packs in our freezer and we can just apply one of them for a few minutes and then it should be completely fine. We just advise the clients not to get really hot for the next sort of 24 to 48 hours, so no exercising immediately afterwards, particularly not in tight, non-breathable fabrics. We recommend don't go in a public pool or a chemically treated spa or anything like that, just until their skin's completely settled down. And obviously sun exposure is paramount to the safety of this entire procedure. So just tell them afterwards as well as beforehand, before having laser treatment, after the laser treatment, they need to be really sun protective as well.